Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I am so excited to talk today with my guest because we're going to be talking tech. But I also am talking to someone that I met on this great networking site called Lunch Club. It's been something that I've really used fairly extensively once the pandemic hit. I don't have to put shoes on. I don't have to get dressed up. And I get to meet people from all over everywhere. So if you're interested, just let us know and we'll be more than happy to provide that information. But anyhow, back to the matter at hand. Please join me in welcoming Bill Boulden to our program today. How are you doing today, Bill?
Oh, today I feel great. Thanks for asking, Deb. It's wonderful to be on the program.
I love it. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you and then we will jump into this. So Bill Boulden is a fractional CTO from Buffalo, New York. They take ideas from conception to production, launching tech startups. In their spare time, they are a DJ and a producer known as Downupright. So again, Bill, welcome.
I feel welcomed. Thank you.
Cool.
So I'm Bill Boulden. For those of you listening at home, I prefer they, them pronouns, if you can help it. And I am, as stated, a fractional CTO of between 6 and 9 tech startups, depending on how you count.
I love it. Well, people always like to know how you got to where you are today. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I've always been very interested in startups. My first programming job out of college was for a startup in the internet advertising industry. And I worked there and put in my time mastering my craft. I went from being a junior developer to a mid-level to a senior to a full stack.
Wow.
And then after I left that company after 7 years, I took the plunge into a fresh startup called Clearview Social, where I was the CTO and founding engineer for 4 years. Then I had a couple bad bets. So I'd had some great startups that worked out. Then I started looking for the next thing after Clearview Social. Went to a company called Transparency Registry. No dice. 6 months after I got there, they ran out of capital. I went back on the market, found another startup. 2 months after I started there, they ran out of capital. So I started realizing, if I'm going to keep looking for full-time employment, but work at these very early stage startups where I'm the founding engineer, I need to be prepared for them to continuously run out of capital because that's just the game. That's how it goes. These are people who are starting a company with $50,000 or $100,000 in their bank account, and it goes fast. So I reevaluated my market proposition and said, well, you know what? These folks think they need a full-time Silicon Valley CTO to build their product. They really don't. What they need is to see to it their product gets built. I can meet them in the middle on cost for a fraction of the time. And instead of costing $250,000 a year like some Silicon Valley bigwig, I can charge between $5,000 and $15,000 a month for a portion of my services. And if it's enough to get their app out the door, then they've been served. And it helps their money go that much further. So I established one client in this model, another client in this model, and they just started steamrolling. So now, depending on if you want to count some ones that I'm still sort of like half involved in, it's somewhere between 6 and 9.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, and I love, the term fractional, because you're doing a fraction of your time. And obviously it's going to vary between, with it may vary day to day as to who's getting a little bit more of your time, things like that. Obviously, time management is a big skill that you need. But yeah, I mean, so many startups, they don't even think through things. Clearly, one of the biggest things they don't think through is money. They think, hey, we've got the greatest thing since, whenever, the pet rock. I always like using the pet rock as an example. And, and they think everybody's going to want to buy it, but they don't think about how they're going to get from here to there. And so they don't have the money, they don't have the resources. And, so many times with startups, and I've talked to business owners like this all the time, they think that they have to be the smart one, and hiring out means that they're not smart enough. And to me, hiring out means they're smart, because they know that they need to reach out and really fill their team with the best possible people they can get.
Yes, one of the common startup mantras is hire all people smarter than you.
Mm-hmm.
You want to try and keep it so that you're the least brilliant person
right.
in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you will rise to the level of the people
mm-hmm.
you surround yourself with.
Right.
So you actually touch on one of my theories that I give when I give my recurring talk, which
mm-hmm.
I did just in a webinar yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I call it, if you build it, they will come itis. So to a founder, they are so close to the problem that needs solving
mm-hmm.
that they assume that once the app exists for it, that the world will be the path to their door.
Right.
And the example I always use is an avid rock collector. We're gonna keep on with your pet rock.
We've got this rock theme going. Yeah.
We've got this rock thing going. Making a social network for people who like to collect rocks.
Okay.
You can post pictures of your rock. You can comment on other people's rocks. You can
mm-hmm.
buy or sell rocks, which is how the app makes its money. They make this app and they think, well, every rock enthusiast in America will get on it, and it'll grow 100 users, 200 users,
mm-hmm.
1,000 users. And then they're surprised after they sink in $100,000 to build the app, and they're sitting at 5 users and no
mm-hmm.
one's posting.
Right.
And so what I encourage the founders who work with me to do is to pilot a no-code solution
mm-hmm.
to building community to prove that their marketing channel works.
Mm-hmm.
So I often tell them, can you build out a Discord community
mm-hmm.
or a subreddit
okay.
or a Slack
mm-hmm.
to 1,000 people?
Mm-hmm.
Prove that you have 1,000 people in your network mm-hmm. of rock enthusiasts who will actually mm-hmm. post in this Discord. And then we'll see, because if you can't get 1,000 people to sign up for your Discord, how will you get 1,000 people to sign up for your app?
Mm-hmm. Well, and a big part of it is my specialty, marketing. They have to figure out who it is that they are marketing to. Who is that avatar? Because it could be that rock collectors aren't tech savvy. They still might want to write everything down in a journal. Using an app or using Reddit or something like that might not be what they are comfortable doing. So maybe you need to kind of take a step back and go, okay, well, let's do that as step 2, but what are we going to do as step 1?
Right. Step 1 is you validate product market fit
mm-hmm.
before you sink 6 figures into building
mm-hmm.
out your software.
Right. Or even 1 or 2. You shouldn't be spending any, really, I mean, you need proof of concept, obviously, but yeah, don't be going to 3 figures if you don't know that it's, at least somewhat viable.
Exactly. And that touches on something else that I teach, which is that there's a real big conception of you need your own app. You need, your custom owned thing in the App Store. It's amazing how much you can get done with a website hosted on Webflow, Wix, or Squarespace
mm-hmm.
that's glued up to a Typeform,
mm-hmm. that's
glued up to an Airtable. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of people launch 6-figure businesses that way without ever having to write the code themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I tell people, when you're starting out, do it as inexpensively as you can, whatever it is, now granted, there are some things that you don't want to cheap out on, but other things like, even if it's just something like social media platforms, okay, get on LinkedIn, but do the free version, all of those various things, because then you have your money to spend where you should be spending your money. I've had people who've said, oh my gosh, I've invested on LinkedIn and I'm on their sales navigator and I'm spending it. And I'm like, is it getting you anything? Well, no. And I say, okay, then, and then I say, I mean, you can back off on your profile, but yeah, people, and that is part of that pre-planning. Where are you going to market? How are you going to market? All of those things that somebody needs to walk a business owner through.
Exactly. And that's when I take on new clients, I often start with my package called the Power Hour, which is a 1 hour immersive session with research before and research after. But an immersive hour where I'm at the person's disposal. And the chief question is, should we even build your app? Right. So it's an investment of a one-time fee for me for my consulting to potentially save you 50 grand or be like, oh, did you know? For instance, and this is just something I've come across. There is a startup that automatically generates Airbnb clones. So if you're trying to make Airbnb accept it's for renting tractors, you can use this Share Tribe, it's called, to generate a ready-to-go app where people can list, buy, and sell their tractors.
Cool.
And so I know about a dozen things like this. There's one that generates Instagram clones. There's one that generates social networks and communities. A lot of times you can buy one of those pieces of softwares, and if you're willing to sacrifice some of your secret sauce, like, no, you won't get to design every screen. You're going to be
right. You might be able to brand it. You might not.
But you can absolutely do proofs of concept that way.
Right. And it is so important to do those proofs of concept because, again, we think, hey, we've got the greatest thing in the world. But it might be the greatest thing in the world. But if nobody buys it, it doesn't matter.
Well, that comes back to product market fit, where I always tell the founders who work with me, I almost always like the idea. There's only been 1 or 2 times I haven't liked the idea.
Right.
The product is always great. But I tell them what sets them apart and what I hold out for is a great market. So I don't even sometimes care what your product is. If you've identified a hot market, like you're like, I know the way in to this particular class of Gen Z Instagram users, I've got the secret sauce for marketing to them, then I'm very interested in building out your product because I think it will succeed.
Right. Well, and aside from anything else, it shows that they've done a lot of the initial thought and planning.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And it's hard when we're starting a business or even, if it's been an established business, we want all the bells and whistles. Like you were saying, people say, oh, everybody should have an app. Everybody should be here. Everybody should do this. And, that's great if you're a company that's gigantic. But if you're a small company, you might not need all those bells and whistles. And there are definitely things that you should do so that people take you seriously. And I think that's one of the things. And even just, some basic things. I remember years ago, I started my company 20 years ago. And I met with this wonderful business consultant who told me things like, that was when you really could, and people still do this, but I don't understand why, print their own business cards at home. And shoot, there, you can get 700 for $5 on websites. I mean, why do you want to do this at home? But, they said, because it's a show that, having it professionally done is a show that you are professional. She even said things like, don't use stamps, get one of those postage meters, because that, that lasted for a while because I had to rent it and I went, ugh, this is stupid. But yeah, other things like, make sure that you obviously there are some legal aspects. Make sure you are a real company. Do all of those things, register with the Secretary of State, some things like that, especially if you're going to be taking in money. Or figure out, okay, here's how I'm going to do it on my taxes. We've talked about stuff like that on other programs. But, I'm not going to spend my money, whether it's $10, whether it's $10,000, with somebody that I think might abscond with it or just, is doing this as a hobby.
Right. You mentioned something that brings me to another lesson I often teach about, which is defining MVP downward. So MVP is your minimum viable product.
Okay.
And when I work with founders, they have in their heads a finished product, something that is as rich and robust as Airbnb. But you think about how many millions and millions of dollars it's taken to build out Airbnb with all their safety controls, messaging features, escalation, support desk.
Yep.
I can't do that for you in your 50 to 100 grand budget.
Right.
So we're going to define MVP downward. And what I tell people is we're going to figure out what is the first thing that we can possibly make.
Okay.
That does the unique business offering, that is safe, and isn't embarrassing.
Right.
Meaning it can have bugs because all software has bugs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, when Apple and Microsoft announced that they have bugs, you know, okay, I guess I can have a bug in my app.
Yeah, exactly. But so in a case of our pet rock app, our rock social network will be like, okay, what's the first thing we can get out there? And it'll be like, all right, what if there's a screen where you can log in and you can make a profile for your rock?
Right.
And you can purchase a rock from another user. But then that brings up safety, which is something people don't think about.
Right.
So when you're DMing another user, if you allow DMs in your application, there will come a point where people harass each other through DM.
Right.
So you need to have blocking and reporting controls.
Right. Yeah. You know, you don't want somebody saying, hey, you're an idiot to or worse, obviously, to somebody else.
Yep. So once you have that safety and then it looks a little polished, not perfect, but a little polished. And once it's got the rocks on it, you're good to go. And that should honestly take 4 to 8 weeks.
Right. You know, and I always tell people, you know, those disclaimers and rules are there to protect everybody. You know, they're there to protect the business and they're there to protect the owners, or not the owners, the customers. You know, and you know, another thing that you might want to put in there with our rock example for safety is, you know, you don't want them, you know, if they're exchanging rocks, you know, be very careful about where you're meeting. You know, you can't tell them, okay, don't meet at your, oh yeah, I mean, you could tell them don't meet at your house, but you can encourage them to meet in public places. You know, things like that, because again, we've got some ne'er-do-wells in this world who, you know, might try and do something that you don't want. So yeah, I mean, you know, it might be worth it to spend a little bit of you know, that budget you've got in talking to some attorneys and saying, okay, what do we need to put on here so that if something bad happens, I'm not going to lose my business.
Right. That's perfectly put. So the thing I see most dropped when planning an MVP is safety related features. But that means you're not CYA for when the trouble does come to your doorstep.
Right. You know, and as we said, it's protecting your end users. You know, and obviously you also want the features in there with your money being protected. You know, if you're doing money exchange on the site, I want to make sure that my credit card is not going off to Never Never Land and somebody's going to go to the Bahamas on it.
Well, a key thing that I counsel my clients to do is use best in class third-party developer plugins to handle things like that. So if you're a startup, now this changes at scale. If you're going to come out of the gate doing 500 million in revenue a year and you're a megacorp, then by all means build your own payment.
Right.
But for these small companies that are just getting started, just integrate with Stripe or Square. They made it very easy for the devs. All the devs need is one API key, and they can send credit card numbers to Stripe securely for processing. And it's a lot less likely that Stripe will ever be breached than it is that your little rinky-dink software might one day be breached. So you're just doing the best by your customers by using that service.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we've on our sites that we manage, we've moved away from PayPal and are using Stripe. You know, and I mean, PayPal's, you know, you don't really hear about it being hacked all that much anymore. And obviously nothing is 100% secure and safe, but Stripe and Square, they do seem to be doing things better. And, you know, kind of, you know, as you said, you want the best in class, you know, do your research a little bit. sometimes, the newest flavor of the month isn't what you want to be using. I was working with somebody the other day and they wanted me to Venmo. Okay, that's fine. I've got the app on my phone. But, I told them, I said, do you know that there's extra fees that the user has on that? And she said, what do you mean? And I said, last time I Venmo'd you money, I was charged an extra $10. I said, and I Venmo'd you 20. So that was, $10 on a $20 charge I was not happy with.
Now
And she had no idea. It was just, ooh, everybody else is using Venmo.
Yeah. There's some other examples of best-in-class software that you can use for your startup, and I'll just run through some quick ones for any listeners who are planning on building their own startup. Mm-hmm. Although, like I said earlier, please talk to me. I'm totally available for consultations.
Right, because things change. And, and the nice thing is they change for the better. We get more and more that work better and better.
Right. For usernames and passwords, you shouldn't be storing those in your own database. You can use a service like Auth0, which integrates with your site and stores all usernames and passwords securely at their location, as well as handles social sign-ons like sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook.
Cool.
So you don't have to write that code yourself. Another great one is if there's any legal side to your business and you need to execute contracts. Don't build your own contract sending software. Use either the DocuSign or HelloSign APIs. Now, DocuSign is kind of the market leader in signature software, but HelloSign has actually a much developer-friendlier API, so I prefer it. They're both great choices, though. And then other things like if your software is going to send text messages to users, don't code that yourself. Use Twilio.
Right.
It's the perfect service for that.
Yeah, and the idea here is that why reinvent the wheel when the wheel already works really well?
Yep, exactly. And so every minute your developer spends coding custom emails to be delivered on behalf of your app is a minute you could have just bought SendGrid instead for much cheaper than that developer is costing you.
Right. And all of, especially the ones that are as you said, the best in class, they do allow some to a lot of personalization, all sorts of things. And so you can, people, the cool thing is, and people don't realize that they've left your site or that that you're using something else. It's just all built in and seamless.
Yep, exactly. And the more of these tools I learn about and get familiar with, the faster it's making my turnaround too. Right. Like my last app took about 3 weeks because I was ready to staple together Auth0 with Mixpanel, with serverless Lambdas, with Twilio. Bam, bam, bam. The only thing I had to write was the glue that holds all those 4 things together. And now I've got a new app. Right.
And you just proved your point as to why people need to hire someone like you, because all of that just went above my head. I mean, it was like, I don't know what all that means. But the important thing is knowing an expert who you trust. And so, when someone is looking at doing something like this, you don't hire the neighbor kid. The neighbor kid might have built an app, might not have built an app, college intern. This is something that it's just like with designing your website and other things. You do want to spend the money to get it done right. As Bill has been saying, we've been talking about security as utmost. I mean, you want to protect your users. So you don't want to have cheaped it out.
Exactly. They say there's nothing more expensive than a cheap developer. Although I've heard the same quote about lawyers, accountants,
and marketing. Oh, yeah. But yeah, I think especially with software and apps and things like that, you are paying for what you get, and so, it's cheap is not usually the best thing that you want to do. And you certainly don't want to be somebody's, hey, I'm going to learn how to do this type of thing.
No, you should, unless you're doing something extremely technically ambitious, like you're doing something AI related,
right?
Then you shouldn't be figuring it out as you go. You should be getting someone who has already brought a dozen products to launch and just knows the steps and who can look at your project and say, okay, I see your project. We're going to do A, B, C in that order. It's going to cost you this much. It's going to take you this long. And tell me when you're ready to fire the starting gun.
Right. And it is, as I said, it's definitely worth doing your research and knowing, at least a little bit about some of the terms. I remember, and I've said this a couple of times on the program, when I was getting my master's degree many years ago, it was a cohort program, which meant we had no choice in the classes. We started the program, it was all the same students and all the same curricula. And one of the classes was video production. Now, this was long enough ago that you went into the studio, you had the big cameras, you had the soundboards, you had, all, it looked really cool. But, now we do it on our phones, right? But all of this stuff, and little me, because I'm always one of those people, puts my hand up and I tell the instructor, this is not anything that I ever really want to do. And kind of like with algebra. So why do I have to learn how to do it, right? And and he looked at me and he said, would I ever be in a position where I would hire someone to do it? And I said, well, conceivably. And he said, then you at least need to know the basics so you can know if they're doing it right or doing it wrong. And that made sense to me.
Yes, that it's always a good idea to keep another coder on staff who's unrelated to the project.
Right. Just kind of a fact checker almost type of.
You need someone to be able to do what's called a pull request and do a review of it and just go through and be like, oh, security vulnerability. Oh, you forgot to check if that field has a negative number in it. Right. Little things like that. And you get there through experience.
And then, before you launch it to the world, have people test it. And have them test it with the thought of breaking it. Like putting in a negative number or 3 decimal points or something just to see what the app or the system does when you deliberately try and break it.
Yeah, when you're on your new Pet Rock app and you're listing a piece of feldspar, try putting in -20 for the price.
Yeah,
the app takes it. Little things like that, you just get used to after you've been a developer long enough. Like, oh, of course, somebody's going to try and make the price ABC. Well, that's not a number.
Right. Or more importantly, what happens if they try and make the price euros or, something like that? Are you, and which it very well might be, depending on what you're doing, we are an international market anymore. So what happens if people do that? Or even something as simple as, and I've come across this numerous times, their phone number. Maybe you've made it where it's required that they put in their phone number, but you only do it for a US format.
+1, 10 digits. Yep, you're going to miss out on people from Belarus.
Right. And more importantly, if they can't do it, then they're going to go, well, why, fine, I don't want to do this at all. And they go on to the next, rock place.
The project I just finished almost released like that with that exact problem until our product manager in Poland tried to sign up for the demo and couldn't. And we were like, ooh, good catch. Good catch.
Right. Zip code and country, another thing that, because, they don't use zip codes, they, and all sorts of things. Yeah. So have somebody at least think about it, because more than likely you will have international guests and purchasers. And so, you want to make sure that they can use it just like anybody else can.
Yeah. And I would say, though, that I do caution founders against worrying about internationalization too soon.
Right. Yeah. Because more than likely that's not going to happen unless you're designing something very specifically for that.
Well, it's simply cost prohibitive to make your software multilingual.
Right.
So if you want the site to also have a selector where you can use the whole site in English, Spanish, Portuguesa, you're doing the development work 3 times over. And it's a lot, and it's not a place you can spend your money when you only have 50 grand to go.
Right. Oh yeah. I was working on a site one time and they sold, the product that they sold in other countries. And we had it translated, even though the countries they were selling in primarily spoke English. we had it translated, and we went to people because you can't rely on software all the time. We had it translated by natural native speakers of that language. Because you mentioned Portuguese. Was it Portuguese? Was it Spanish Portuguese? I mean, because I discovered there's differences. And so if you're going to do something like that, and I'll tell you, that was not inexpensive. It was a 2-page thing that somebody was buying. And to make sure that we didn't say your mother wears army boots, we had it go through a translator.
Exactly. So that's something that I often recommend can wait until phase 2, not a part of MVP, unless it's core to your product. If you're making a language translation software, by all means. But in that case, why aren't you just using AWS's pre-made translate web service, which will already exist and do it for you?
Right. And of course, AWS is the big guy. For those who don't know, it's owned by that little company called Amazon. And so they're pretty good at international stuff.
Yes, and you'd be amazed how many Amazon Web Services there are. There are probably close to 300 now.
Oh, I know.
They do all manner of things. Some of them very technical, like spinning up virtual servers or running serverless lambdas or doing inter-system communication. But they also have this excellent suite of AI services. Like they have one called Comprehend, which can take any block of text and extract the meaning from it. So you could you could type in a sentence and have it supply a sentence like, Deb is really great and an awesome podcast host. And it will spit back out, okay, the subject here is Deb, the mood is positive, and Deb equals podcast host. It'll remove all the uncertainties of language and extract what the meaning really was. And at one of my previous social media companies, we were able to make a tweet sentiment analyzer that could alert you if people were talking crap about you on Twitter, because we could detect negative sentiment in tweets using Comprehend.
And if you're a company where you're getting a lot of either influencers or whoever talking about your business, that's an important thing to have, especially if they're saying bad stuff.
Yep. That's just one example. They have their recognition API, which you can supply an image to, and it will tag all the things in that image. This is an apple. This is a girl.
Oh, I love it when they do that.
Now, that one's pretty controversial because it also can do facial recognition, which is of dubious ethics in today's society.
Oh, yeah, because people can take images and then, do all sorts of things. And, the whole thing with creating the fake videos, that's silly. I mean, it's one of those things where it's interesting and scary at the same time.
Yeah. There's a company fighting in this area to stop deepfakes called TruePic. I learned about them because I coincidentally had an idea for a very similar business, and then after researching it, found out that they owned several patents that would have blocked.
I was kind of like, well, at least you found out before you dumped a lot of money in it.
Yeah, exactly. You always got to do your research. But TruePic makes software for camera phones that logs the contents of the camera to the blockchain so it can never be falsified, and proves that it came from the hardware phone on the camera and wasn't digitally manipulated.
Wow. It's kind of scary that we have to worry about stuff like that. But, people have been doing things like that forever. I mean, even if you're just talking about, voice impersonators, things like that. I mean, they've done things like that. But to bring us back on subject, one of the things that, of course, AI is used for, and especially in apps, are the chatbots. And I love chatbots when I know I'm talking to a computer or a person. I mean, if I can't quite figure out why, and I mentioned Lunch Club in the start, they have a chatbot. And clearly, and I don't know how many thousands of users they Lunch Club has really grown. And so they can't, they probably can't staff it like they would like to, because they are still just considered a startup. But I wanted to know why, when we schedule Lunch Club meetings, it's only Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because actually Monday, Tuesday work better for me. So I go to their little chat feature and I send in a little message. Now I knew I was probably talking to an AI and not a person. And so I worded it very simple, very basic, why can't we? And I got back a very basic response. And it was something along the lines of, this is how we started. We may expand it in the future. Okay, really didn't answer my question. But then it said, would you like to speak with a human? I believe is how it put it. Would you like to speak with a human customer service rep? And I liked that, because then if I wanted to go further, I could. And so their technology was at the point where it could differentiate between the two. And I really like that feature. And that's something that I think a lot of app and software developers, they come up with their frequently, their list of frequently asked questions, but then they forget that somebody's going to go, well, yeah, but.
And just for the wannabe software founders out there, if you would like to add features like these to your own application, the thing you want to use is Intercom, which puts a live chat bot on your website that starts with AI-based conversation, but then escalates at the end of that conversation to a human. So Intercom is the third-party plugin that does this.
I love it. Yeah, because there are, I don't care what business you're in, there are basic questions that, or even if you're just trying to determine which department somebody needs to go to, is it a sales question? Is it technical support? Is it, whatever? That those basic questions can be answered by the computer as opposed to a person, with the one, you probably, did you ever watch Laugh In? You probably, where Lily Tomlin was the operator, and she would say one ringy dingy, two, and then she'd try and answer their questions. Well, that's again, that's, you're going to save money by not having that real person there. But at some point you do need the real person.
There's a very successful startup in Buffalo that I'm friends with the founders of, called High Operator, that makes an intercom-like chat product that seamlessly merges AI suggestions with human oversight.
Cool.
So when you're talking with a High Operator bot, you're actually speaking with an AI and a human at the same time, and they can go much faster.
Right. Yeah. And we do still, on occasion, need those human people. One of the favorite things that I see on Facebook is, the picture of the child with a phone, and it's screaming, cussed a real person. And I'm like that all the time. Flight gets canceled or something, and I'm like, I just want to talk to a real person. I'm sorry that your AI is not going to do what I need. I just want to, and then you start pounding on 0 on the phone, right? But yeah, having that little human interaction in there is a great thing for people to consider.
Yep, and that's part of building a startup, is customer success or customer support. You need to have a plan. I typically encourage the founder to sign up for Intercom and do customer support live at all hours on the website. And if they don't like it because it makes too many demands on them at all hours, they are not giving enough for their company. That's what I basically say. It's always all hands on deck. When Clearview Social was just 4 people, the 4 of us took shifts rotating to answer questions on Intercom.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Just 2 programs ago, I talked with Dave Avron, who is a customer experience expert, and, which is a different level than customer support. And one of the things we talked about was things like, you go into a restaurant now, and this started a while ago, but really picked up obviously during the pandemic, where there's not a menu, a physical menu in the restaurant. There's a little piece of paper that's got the QR code on it. Great. I mean, you're able to change your menu every day, do whatever. But then you get this little itty bitty menu that my old eyes can't read. And then I get really frustrated. And we went into a place a week or so ago where that was the thing. And the nice thing was theirs was so sophisticated that the QR code was table specific. So they knew that, I was table 8, and I put in my credit card. I mean, I did all of that stuff, but it took probably 10 minutes because I kept stopping and talking and, doing all sorts of stuff. And, those who wanted their beer and their water right away were getting really frustrated because nobody walked up and said, can I get you something to drink? It was all completely automated. And so they kind of hit the fail button on that. Again, it's just, you need kind of that human and technology type of interaction.
So this is something I talk about with UI, UX, and CX. So UI is the user interface. UX is the user experience. CX is the customer experience. And what it means is you look at an example like Tinder. So on Tinder, the UI is the way it's designed and how you swipe. It looks a certain way. It's this many pixels. It's these colors. You swipe left and right. The user experience is one of, I'm going to find matches. I'm going to meet with people. This is my user story. I'm here to meet people. The customer experience is that I go on a date and it's really bad. And the guy is a jerk. And now I never want to use Tinder again. And so even though the devs and the people who built Tinder are not responsible for making sure the date is good, in a way, they kind of are.
Right, because it's all tied together.
So in this case, everything software-wise had a nice UI and UX. You were able to bring it up on your phone. It looked pretty. You were able to place your order. Everything worked. But the customer experience was still a very bad one.
Right.
And so, at the end of the day, you have to make sure that this rock app we're building has the best rocks on it. Because part of your go-to-market is going to be like supplying 1,000 rock vendors, or else you might not be able to control that the rocks people sell are very ugly. And that would be a bad customer experience, even though technically it's not your problem.
Right. Yeah. And of course, anytime somebody has a bad customer experience, they, get their phone out and they go to whatever social media platform they're using. And it's, oh my gosh, this was the worst thing in the world. Don't ever use that rock platform. Don't go there. Don't do that. Simply because somebody picked the wrong rock.
Yep. And so I tell my companies that I can control your UI and UX. I can't control your CX, but you are ultimately responsible for your CX.
Yep. Yeah, that customer experience, because, it still, no matter what our level of technology is, word of mouth is still our best way to get information out there. I can see something multiple times, ads, whatever. But if somebody I don't even know says something on Instagram about, hey, this is a great or a bad company, I'm going to believe them. And so, yeah, word of mouth really is just, and so that customer experience is just absolutely crucial.
Yep. And that's, coming back to me and a little bit of self-promotion, that's how I get most of my business is referrals, because I do a good job launching these products. So I have a good customer experience where the people are like, Bill Boulden built our platform for us. We're happy with it to this day. We recommend Bill.
Right.
And
yeah. They just do a great job.
Yep. And that's how I get all my business. So I'll be the first person to vouch for the power of referrals.
Right. Plus it's cheaper. Back to that expense stuff. Well, speaking of that, what's your biggest professional success? What did you think was, oh my gosh, this was fantastic?
I would say there's a couple. First off, like any startup veteran, the definition of a success is an exit.
Right.
And so I have one exit under my belt, and it was Clearview Social. And so I consider that a great personal and professional success, having been the CTO there for 4 years. I was not the CTO at the point in time that it exited, but I helped get them to that point.
Cool.
I also am very proud of the work I did with Hello Audio, which is one of my startups, which is a podcast hosting platform.
I've heard of them.
Oh, yes.
Mhm.
They do really cool things with
Mhm.
podcast hosting where
Mhm.
they serve private podcasts
Mhm.
that aren't public,
Mhm.
and you can individualize the feeds, which
Mm.
you can't do anywhere else. You could
Right.
actually make a choose your own adventure
Mhm.
um, feed where by listening to one episode, it says, "Hi, Deb, welcome to your custom feed." And you
Cool.
get access to secret episodes that don't
Mhm.
appear in other people's players.
Mhm.
It is some of the coolest code I've ever written.
I bet.
Very,
Mhm.
very proud of the system that runs
Mhm.
Hello Audio. And even though I'm not there anymore, I have very fond memories of going through the TechStars
Mhm.
program with them. So that's another personal and
Mhm.
professional success of mine is the
Cool.
TechStars program.
Well, you want to share one of the ones that you went, oh,
I would have to say my biggest professional regret is Transparency Registry. So Transparency Registry was a consumer protection product
Mhm.
for helping banks securely manage mortgage debt on the blockchain.
Mhm.
And when I was brought on board, it was because the product had been in development for 18 months
Mhm.
and still hadn't been released.
Ooh.
And I found out that the devs were
Mhm.
having way too much fun with the blockchain. So
So they
basically,
weren't wanting it to proceed.
well, they weren't doing things like designing the user interface screens that a user would use.
Mhm.
They weren't doing things like building out the business logic that let you
Mhm.
upload mortgage debt. Instead, they were spending their days honestly having fun by getting to nerd out on very specific things in the blockchain. So
Mhm.
they built their own hash algorithm, they built their own consensus algorithm.
Ooh.
They had all these internal debates about
Mhm.
like what the blockchain storage mechanism would
Mhm.
be. All this stuff that didn't relate to the health
Mhm.
or success of the product.
Mhm.
And so I came in, put a stop to all that,
Mhm.
and got it to launch within
Mhm.
6 months of coming in, just in time for the company to run out of capital. We released and we
Mhm.
ran out of capital about 2
Oh.
weeks later. So
Oh
we had to
no.
see if
Mhm.
it would succeed.
Yeah, I mean those are painful, but it was like you were saying at the very start, you learn from those. And my thought is that there's really no such thing as a failure, because if you should be learning something from it. And yeah, we just need to learn from maybe not our mistakes, but we can learn from someone else's mistakes.
I learned from my own mistakes
Mhm.
too. The big thing I learned was to stop seeking full-time employment if
Mhm.
I want to work for pre-launch products.
Right.
I like
Yeah.
to launch products,
Mhm.
but if you're not live yet and have no revenue, I
Mhm.
should not sign a contract that says I am now your employee for this much in wages
Mhm.
and salary
Oh yeah.
because I'm going to get the rug pulled in 3
Mhm.
months.
Well, and that's going to go for many of the, and I'm putting this in my air quotes, the employees. I mean, the company should be hiring consultants at that stage, because they don't need full-time people, and it doesn't matter whether it's tech, sales, marketing, HR. I mean, we can do an awful lot with consultants and save money, but still get really top talent.
Yep. And I like to think of myself as one of such consultants.
Hmm.
If you reach out to me about any work or potentially helping take a
Hmm.
product of yours to production, I have a deep network of other
Hmm.
fractional CTOs
Ah.
and
Hmm.
fractional CMOs
Hmm.
that I will be happy to refer you to.
Hmm.
You can build out your whole new startup using a fractional CTO, fractional CMO,
Yep.
fractional CFO,
Hmm.
and get all these people for a
Hmm.
fraction of what
Right.
they would cost if you were trying to raise $1
Hmm.
million in pre-seed
Hmm.
capital the Silicon Valley way.
Right. Yeah. Because for the most part, we really don't need full-time employees as a startup. I mean, you've got one, the owner, and even at that, they might not be doing it full time. They might still have their day job, because they need an income, they need insurance, all of those things. And so it's, and I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see companies make is they bite off more than they can chew. They really do think I have to have employees. I have to rent space. I have to do all of these things. And, shoot, before COVID, we knew it was a virtual world. Now we really know it's a virtual world.
Yep.
And so why not take advantage of it?
I am flying to Amsterdam in 3 weeks for a company summit for my Dutch client, On Wellbeing, where I will finally get to meet the people I've worked with for a full year. All my companies are remote. I've never met Jerry and Lucy and Zaid and Robert and Kevin, but we're all meeting in Amsterdam in 3 weeks to finally put faces to names.
Oh, that'll be great.
Really looking forward to that. But I just want to mention this to go to show that the company's 2 years old and it's been fine without people meeting in person.
Yeah.
You really don't need that. It's a perk for when they're successful.
Yeah. And it's and even big companies are doing that. It's amazing how we really have discovered that we don't need to be in the same place. Now, that said, I am a firm believer that, many times those side conversations, by the coffee machine, in the hall, in the elevator, whatever, sometimes lead to the greatest things. And we don't have those when we're not in an office. But, it's just, I think the benefits far outweigh, being in one physical location, or you do the hybrid, you do all sorts of things.
I actually have found that the end of water coolers has also meant the end of water cooler gossip.
Because and a waste of time, whether they're gossiping or not.
There's something about having to type it out in Slack where, like, you might say a crappy thing about coworker X, but can you really type it out and put it in writing?
Or a Zoom call that might be recorded.
You're not going to say the negative thing. And so the last place that I worked in person had a pretty rotten company culture. And it was in large part due to water cooler talk. A lot of backstabbing, stuff like that. Part of why I moved on from that place. But my last 13 or 14 companies have all been virtual.
And I think that about the only ones who really have panicked about are those micromanagers, those folks that really wanted to walk in and see what was on your computer screen.
We call them butts in seats. They really want to know that your butt is in the seat.
Right. Yeah. And the companies that have really figured it out have, gone to the fact that, well, you know what? Bill gets done in 3 hours what he was doing in 8 hours in an office. So we don't care because he gets the work done, and they are doing the work, all of those various things. Or maybe it's that you're able to work in the evenings, all of these various things. So businesses have gotten a lot more flexible. Part of it is, yes, we're all of a sudden in multiple time zones and things like that. But they look at it and they go, hey, Bill can get this done at any point in time. We're certainly not going to tell them that they can't do that. And I think that is one of the big things that the companies really did figure out.
Yep. And it also helps you gain access to a globally distributed workforce. At Quan Wellbeing, we have over 14 different countries represented among our staff.
Right. And they're the best of the best. I mean, why limit yourself to saying, oh, we only have to be in X country, or, no, now it is an HR nightmare. I mean, there's all sorts of payment things that, that gets a little.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be their legal department.
No. I was talking with somebody about that just yesterday, about the fact that, when we have people working remotely, all of a sudden, it's even just in the US, state laws vary, from place to place. Do you have to pay workers' comp? Do you are you as the company, are you having to decide, okay, we have to do income tax for them in that state, all those various things. So, poor HR people during all of this, but yeah, it's just, I see so many benefits to being able to work remotely that I think, many companies really are going to say, hey, this is just the way we're going to continue.
Yep, absolutely. The only thing that's kind of a downside is that I got to make sure I get out of the house.
I know.
I live my life right here at this desk.
Yep.
And then when it's quitting time, I turn the chair around, go over to that computer back there, and work on my other hobbies like music and DJing on that computer.
Right.
But the whole time is spent in this chair, either facing this way or that way.
Yep.
So,
I know. Yeah, my husband will come up and say, "Time to go for a walk." Oh, okay. And I'll be honest, I do miss the social aspects of getting together because I have not gone on an in-person networking event. Haven't attended one since February of 2020. I miss those people, but I don't miss the commute. Oh my gosh, here in Atlanta, I laugh. I don't miss having to put shoes on. I've saved so much money and so much time. And when I really thought about it, I miss those people, really miss those people. But did I lose business? No. So that was what it came down to. Because of course those groups are all meeting again. But it's like, no, I'm going to live my online life. But yeah, we do have to remember, get our little heinies out of our seats, go for walks, do all of those things, see other people, even if it's just waving at them across a room, or across the park. It is good to get out and do things like that.
Yep. So I have to make sure I do something interesting with all my evenings, or I can fall into a pattern of depression from not having enough stimulation in social life.
Yeah. And, there's just obviously the health benefits, and we don't need to have this computer light on us all the time and all of those things. But, well, oh my gosh, Bill, this has been so much fun. Boy, we covered, a multitude of topics, and I always love it when that happens with my guests. But tell us really how people can reach you and the services that you provide.
Oh, perfect. So the best way to get in touch with me is LinkedIn, where I'm linkedin.com/in/Bill Boulden, Boulden. I also run my own website at billbolden.com, where you can put in inquiries for business and retain me for a power hour, VIP day, a fractional CTO ship, or any other package you might be interested in. Let me help you launch your next startup. You can also find me on Twitter, where I'm at Downupright, but I talk more about my music and DJing on Twitter and less about startups. So only come there for me if you really want to learn more about my EDM and my upcoming Kickstarter.
Cool. Okay, so what genre of music?
Electronic dance music.
Okay. Very cool. It's, but my tastes vary. It actually varies depending on the day sometimes, or the hour. I'm like, my husband's like, "What are you listening to now?" Or the cats are like, "Hey, this is fun." It all depends on my mood.
But I would be very happy if anyone out there has an idea for I always wished there was an app for blank.
Cool.
Get in touch. I can consult. I'll lay out clearly the path and obstacles before you and give you a really realistic sense of what it will take to make your vision a reality.
Right. And you make it so easy. On your website, there is this big blue button. We're here to help. Somebody can't say, "Well, we couldn't get in touch with you."
Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been a blast being on
Yes.
this program.
Oh, yes. Do you have any final thoughts you want to leave everyone with?
I will share one more startup lesson that I want to reassure everybody about. People will steal your idea, but it doesn't matter because they cannot steal your execution. And ideas are cheap. I get pitched 3 to 4 new ideas a day. Execution is not replaceable. So when you come to me and you're like, "You got to promise not to tell anybody, somebody else will make the pet rock app." It's like, I promise you, Facebook or somebody will rip you off. It will happen. What are you going to do in your execution and your go-to-market plan and your sales and hiring strategy to make sure that you are far enough ahead and best in class that it seems better to acquire you at that point than to rip you off?
Right. I love it. Well, Bill, this has been absolutely fascinating. And we have to have you on again because this is obviously something that is always going to continue to grow and to change. So it'll be great fun to talk to you with the next, steps as to what's going on in the world. And so I can't wait to do that again.
Oh, thank you. I can't wait to be here again, Deb. It's been wonderful.
Great. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having a delightful discussion with Bill Boulden. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.